love having my kids at the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an adjustment. It really is. Although if you've made the investments in your relationship, it's a great adjustment. It's fun.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure.
I'm really glad my wife didn't hear that part of the conversation.
It's all good.
You guys will be all right.
Oh yeah. Yep.
She might actually watch today's show.
Jess is
She
gonna
may.
watch?
Never know.
She said she wanted to watch you, Tom.
Oh my Lord.
She didn't care about me.
Now the pressure's really on.
Yeah, so no more having more kids talk, please. Yeah, so Tom, usually as we're coming up on this, I got to stop acting like a host. I forget I'm on the other side today. But we're usually talking about, because it's Friday, what are we going to drink tonight? But
that's not a very fun conversation with me.
Well, I don't know. Could be something fruity and you'd want to have on the beach.
Probably going to be a peach fuzzy navel or something like that.
So we did. I think Jeff got a pina colada into the description of the show today somehow.
I got a what? Oh.
That would be appropriate.
I'm down for a pina colada. That sounds pretty good right now.
I haven't had one of those in ages.
Well, you know, it's starting to warm up.
I know.
It's getting to be that season.
Sure is.
I'm about as fluffy as they come, unfortunately. Do you see Sparks laughing at us already?
Yes, I do see that.
Bumpkin. He's great.
There's beer in the fridge over here, Rick. Now I'm tempted. Actually, the real goal of today's show, I think, is to turn Tom red.
Yes.
That shouldn't even be a goal. It's so easy with me, guys, especially if known both of you for so long. I mean, Kershner's got some great stories that'll turn me red instantly. So.
Back to the conferences.
Yeah. We've had a few interesting, colorful moments.
Yeah, for sure. I always remember. I think it was in Vegas, but we were.
You're gonna get cut off in 2 seconds.
It was a late night, and we were standing by a fireplace. I think it was at the. Was it the Playboy? It was the Playboy.
Yep.
What's that called? Is that at the top of Hard Rock or something?
It was the Palms. The Playboy Club.
Yes. Yeah, Playboy Club. Yeah. Yeah, I remember us standing there for an hour or so talking about some crazy shit.
Yeah, me being extremely uncomfortable and
yeah, you were. You were Mr. Mute. You weren't saying much. And I was like,
that's because I was very uncomfortable. There's too many scantily clad women running around.
I like this thought of Tom by the Playboy Club. We need to expand on this.
It was
when I say
some of it's a blur.
Stories on me. He's got some pretty good stories. So
yeah, a lot of it's a blur though. And shit, what was his name? Guy who you had the CRM company you worked for?
Keith,
yeah, Keith Latman. It was his party, if I'm not mistaken.
It was.
Because I think he was dating one of those chicks, which makes sense. See, it's all coming back to me.
Yeah. Let's not go too far down that rabbit hole, please.
I have a few things I could blur it out, but I'll keep it to myself.
I was actually thinking about Jeff coming on this call today and thinking about I've known you a long time and I remembered that Michael Wins was actually who introduced us back in Dealer Skins days. You were running a department, so was I.
Yeah, you were with Motor something, right?
Motor cars, yep.
Yeah, And I tell you, I know I've told this story before, but I was frustrated, I was fed up, and I was about ready to just get out of the industry to some degree. And Michael introduced us, and you introduced me to all your big things. And again, this was what, 20 years ago.
20 years
And
ago.
you had introduced me to your reportings, and showed me how you were tracking everything, from click to sale, basically, just the attribution and all that good stuff. And you had shared all your reports with me, and it like rekindled this new flame inside of me. I was like, oh yes, this is great. Because for once I was able to like prove,
Yeah.
your reporting allowed me to really prove what we were doing was really having an impact.
It's ironic,
Probably.
Jeff. It leads into some of the questions for today, because actually the things that were frustrating you and made you want to quit still happen today.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty
Oh, I know they
interesting.
do. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think everyone knows who Alex is, but Tom, just for anyone that's not familiar with Mr. Harsha, why don't you give us a little bit of backstory?
Yeah, started cleaning cars at my first dealership when I was 16, and sold there for 8 years ish before I moved to Cleveland. Worked for the Motor Cars Group there for almost 10. So I spent the first half of my career in direct retail and running stores, and then the last 15 years ish have been on the vendor side. So I've gotten a really interesting view of both sides of the business, but I've spent my entire 34 years now in automotive. That's all I've done. That's all I know. And I'm extremely passionate about it. And that's the very high level flyby, but a lot of water under the bridge already.
Can I add another one on top of that? So I don't know that people know
Do
this
you
about
do you
Tom.
ever?
So Tom also, sorry, Jeff, is very passionate about people.
Yeah.
I think that story you guys were just telling about him giving you his
That's not the
reporting.
Tom I know.
Well, it depends on the people, right? Maybe it's the Playboy girls. Who knows?
Yeah,
But
maybe.
yeah, but that's what Tom loves to do is really sit behind the scenes and grow his team.
Yeah, I think that's come over
Do you
time.
ever miss the dealership side?
That's a good question, Jeff. I'll tell you the times when I miss it. And again, it's with
When
a
it's
fun
time to
thing
buy a
about.
car?
No, actually, being on the vendor side, one of the things that you get to see as a vendor is just how ingenious dealers are. Like when their backs are against the wall or shit's changing fast, it's amazing how entrepreneurial they are. And there's just this raw thing that I actually miss. I think that's the part that gets in your blood. It's just that ability to move very very quickly with the markets and continue to make
Mhm.
money and acquire cars and all these things that we've had to do the last couple of years. That's what I miss. The dealers, most of the dealers I've been working with over the years, they're amazing entrepreneurs. They really are, and I think that's the piece that I miss. Um,
Mhm.
Honestly, selling cars, there's something really kind of special about convincing somebody to spend 60,000 70,000 bucks with you. There's this little high you get every time you do it. It's kind of fun. But yeah, I don't miss
Yeah,
the
I haven't.
Saturday and Sunday hours. I can tell you that part.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, there is something about that little high that you get whenever you make that big sale, no doubt.
Isn't
It's
that
cool.
the only kind of sale that's happening right now?
Yeah,
Pretty
pretty
much.
much. Is there anything that maybe say like bugs you about the dealerships today?
Yeah, I don't want to dominate, Alex. So please cut me off or whatever. But the things that bug me,
Don't worry about that.
having been through that whole thing myself, coming up as literally a 16-year-old washing cars. I know that there were the inconsistencies were and the misses, and I don't really see that getting solved a whole lot anymore, Jeff.
Mhm.
And so what I mean by that is like just the talent acquisition processes are still so archaic. I think to really find the right people to do sales and the right people to do finance, it's more of a gut feel still for dealers, and it doesn't need to be anymore. Like they really could get a lot more refined at that. There's still some big dealer groups that actually do profiling and actually starting to get better at it, but the vast majority still it's a gut quick decision. And I think what happens is you put the wrong people in the wrong seats of the bus, and we don't need to anymore. Is the reality of it. We can actually do
Mhm.
way better than we're doing. The other thing that drives me crazy is I see a lack of ongoing internal training. And I think about the dissatisfaction that you hear and the burnout that you hear. A lot of that could be alleviated with a little bit better internal programming, and just keep them up to date. Keep letting those salespeople. You spend all this time
Sure.
on customer satisfaction, spend a little more time on employee satisfaction too. It's like those two go hand in hand, and you see all these examples in the business world of organizations that really do a great job with their employees in addition to their customers, and they have the happiest customers on the planet. And I think we could do a
Mhm.
little bit better there, in my opinion. But anyway, I go on deep down a
Mhm.
wormhole, but that gives you at least a little idea.
Can I stack
I
on to
think it
that a
was,
little bit?
I think it was George I yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Joe, you might be a little your feed might be a little delayed today. You're coming through a little pixelated all of a sudden. But
Uh-oh. Alright.
but I spent the beginning of this week at the Auto Intel Summit, and one of the themes that
That's
came
right.
out of that was the kind of employee that the dealers might be hiring in the future. So, is it the same kind of person that we've known all along, or is it someone else that is more adept in the technology and utilizing different technologies for certain points in the process to help move that customer through a little faster, and maybe even
Mhm.
be able to handle a customer from the first time they're seen at the dealership to the delivery at the end. So
What conference was this again? Who put that conference on?
so the Cherokee Media Group does it. I think they're out of Carolina, and
Okay.
Auto Intel Summit. And it was actually, I gotta say, I don't go
What
to a
made
lot
you
of
decide to go to this
conferences.
one? Yeah, because you don't go to a lot of conferences, and neither one of us do much anymore, but, there's other outside forces behind that.
Well, yeah, pandemics aside, the the other thing that was neat about this one was I walked away learning some things, and that's one of the things about some of the conferences that they've gotten a little stale. It's
Mhm.
the same old 101 over and over again, and I'd heard it before, so it's just
What did
boring.
what did Alex Snyder learn? I'm curious.
Well, there were a number of things. The one that resonated the most with me is the some of the accuracy issues when it comes to what's being shown to consumers these days, especially
Hmm.
through digital retailing solutions, other ways that it's being put out there, in the way the manufacturers are dictating it and whatnot, um, and the kind of problems and how cascading those are. And I was happy to hear the word frictionless being used a lot over and over and over again during the show, and that's obviously because FRIKINtech is frictionless
I was
technology,
gonna
right?
say.
I love hearing it, um, but nobody was referring to us. But there's obviously a big drive here in any way that frictionless um, sales process, and it was all sales process. I think service is,
Mhm.
is intended in this too, but frictionless throughout is really the goal. And a lot of the ways that different vendors, because there are a lot of vendors at this show, were tackling that and trying to solve it for dealers, and that was good to see. It's obvious the
Mhm.
industry has pivoted a bit due to the pandemic, and the vendors that were there were presenting great solutions.
Hmm. Yeah, I wasn't even familiar with that conference. Tom, just a quick step backwards here. You gave us a little bit of history, but you didn't get into the specifics because you're now working with Alex at FRIKIntech. Where were you before, and what made you come over to put up with Alex's shit?
So I was at Call Review before. I was there for
That's
almost 7 years, and my last job at Colorado, I ran all of operations for them for the first 5 years I was there. But then once they were acquired by a capital company, I was
Mhm.
then promoted into the chief product officer, and I was actually in charge of building the new analytics platform for Call Review. It has yet to be really fully released, but and inside of that deal was a CDK deal. So they were looking for an analytics partner with their VoIP systems as they were upgrading for all the dealership phone
Okay.
systems. And that was a immensely complicated and really fun project. And I learned a crap ton over that year and a half about
I bet.
AI and the actual OCR capabilities and technologies around phones. And honestly, some of
Mhm.
the findings that we got into were actually kind of incredible. Where some of the biggest opportunities were on phones for dealers, the machines we're starting to identify for us was pretty cool stuff. Um, Being acquired by a capital company, I love to be on the cutting edge. I like to build new things. I like to
Mhm.
be very agile. I get bored really quickly. And so as Call Review became from a small company when I joined them to a mid-sized company, and they were acquired by a capital company, so it's all this reporting and board meetings, and
Ugh,
honestly, I got really
burnout.
frustrated.
Yeah, I bet.
um, Alex and I came up with this idea for this company, and it was just so much fun. Every night and weekend, we were working on it together, and really, Jeff, thinking about like for the first time ever in my life, I was always working for another entity on the
Mhm.
vendor side, and I sort of got to blend my ideas in, but we never quite hit. It was still like, yeah, that sort of solves dealers' problems, but not really. Like, we're not really going to make a big splash for them. And then the
Mhm.
stuff that Alex and I were talking about based on our experience, like we're gonna have to build this foundation first, but once we get that foundation laid, like we can literally go in and start to solve problems for dealers. And when I say that, like dealers like, what do you mean? What do you mean? I was just on the phone with a big dealer group this morning actually, and he reacted negatively originally to why I said that. It's like, no, don't get me wrong. We are asking salespeople and managers and BDC people to do a bunch of mundane tasks that they're frankly they hate and they're not good at.
Mhm.
If I can automate that stuff and pass it off to them at the right time with the seamless pass off, and just let them do what they do best, we can really impact this industry, right? And I think
Mhm.
to me that's the excitement where I said, you know what, with Alex and the team that we assembled here, they're really smart, really talented group of people that we've put together, and like we legit have a shot to deliver something that Lily is can help dealers change the game going forward. And I think that was enough for me to say, even with two kids in college, take the risk and make the move, which in hindsight still scares the crap out of me if I'm being honest. But I haven't regretted it for a day. Honestly, the group that we put together is so talented, and it's funny. The industry, like what we've selling so far, they've only seen a little piece of what we actually are up to, and I think that's the
Mhm.
most exciting part for me.
That's great. So I'm always curious, and I'm sure I asked Alex this, but I forget. Why the name? Where'd you guys come up with the name FRIKINtech? And why? Like, I feel like that's all Alex and none of Tom.
Am I
Let's.
taking this one, or are you taking this one?
Oh, hey man, it's your brainchild on that front. It's all you. Just for your
So Jeff,
Really?
mom. Just so your mom can hear you say it.
oh my lord. So Jeff, this was unfortunately my idea. On a brainstorming session late one evening, I think there was a few glasses of wine involved.
It was
But
Duker
as
too.
I was referencing, I'll never forget. I was actually telling all my partners this story last night. That the first time I explained to my parents that I was leaving Call Review and I was starting a company with a bunch of friends, and they're like, "Oh, what's the name?" And I'm like, "So my parents are very religious." And
Mhm.
the first time I told them, I got a full blown Thomas Harsha from my mom, which means I'm in deep shit.
Wow.
Oh yeah, and so I had to do a lot of explaining on FRIKIntech. And no, it's frictionless technologies. Everything we build, we want to reduce friction for the shopper and for the dealer. And my mom's literally looking at it and shaking her head at me. She's like, "I'm
She's like,
not buying it.
whatever.
It doesn't work." So I would
Well,
love
that
to blame
works.
Alex, but unfortunately, it was at least initially my idea. And
I,
thank you, Drew. I appreciate that vote of confidence.
yeah, and we were spinning, and leading up to this, and again, Molly Duker was involved. So if anyone knows that wine, it's
Oh yeah.
heavily alcoholed. But
Mm-hmm.
but Tom was just watching us in his fashion, being nice and quiet, sitting off in the corner, sipping his wine, and we're sitting here, dealer this, I that, auto this, all this stuff. And he's like, "Hey guys, hold on a second. I got an idea." And yeah, that was a big one.
There it was. What other companies have? Because you're right. Every business starts with dealer or I or something like that. Are there any other ones that sort of stick out that have a completely awkward name that you wouldn't think would be automotive? One that sticks out to me, of course, has been around forever, is HomeNet. It's like, HomeNet. What the hell has that got to do with inventory management and merchandising? But I
Think
do
about
know
who
the whole
started that
story.
company,
Yeah,
Jeff.
yeah. Well, I remember the full story behind that. They were trying to run some type of optic wires of something around internet,
Yeah.
and they just decided not to change the name.
I
But
think
knowing Jesse,
dealer.com had a different connotation to many people in Vermont.
Is there a story behind that?
Oh, well, Vermont likes some to imbibe in cannabis for sure.
Mm. Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
I think Ryan nailed it.
Yeah, the
The one that
gabagoo.
probably sticks out to me the most is Gubagoo. I'm like, what? I couldn't even say
Oh
it
yeah, that
properly
one
for like
too.
the first year or two.
Yeah, that's an awkward one for sure. But you do remember it.
You do.
Yeah, do you remember? So when you guys came together and you're trying to figure out, speaking to Alex, I know he wanted to build some type of software solution, try and get some headaches out of the dealership. Build upon that, that software that can just relieve any type of friction. What was some of the first things that come to mind? What were you guys thinking? I know, both of you have an extensive amount of knowledge behind CRM. Tom, you've with CRM company for years, and I'm sure we're the mastermind behind it, quite a bit of that. Alex, you helped build the dealer.com original dealer.com CRM basically from the ground up. um, and anyone that knows you guys, you'd think you would have gotten into the CRM business. I don't think you could pay me enough money to get into automotive CRM. But I'm always surprised, like what made you maybe stay away from the CRM side because of you guys is so much talent behind that, and go down a different route.
So, Tom, if you don't mind, I'll jump in on this one.
Make it.
So it's also funny because you were asking that question while Ed Brooks is saying, "Was there magic involved in our name?" So anyway, and the answer is no,
Rainbows.
no, definitely not. But we started. That's what we were going to do. We were going to build a CRM.
Yeah.
And the company was originally funded out of our pockets. And so we paid for developers and well, let me take a step back. I'm getting ahead. So the CRM we were going to build was going to be a pencil first. So everything was going to evolve around the pencil and making sure the customer had, one of their two questions that they all have, which is how much and how soon. Right. So if you can answer those two questions, you can hold their attention. You can continue to have the conversation with them. So the CRM was going to be around these things. So we started building a pencil, and then again we were bootstrapping the company out of our own pockets, and it's like, okay, we're doing a lot of development, but we're not anywhere close to being in the marketplace yet, and we're running out of money. So we pivoted. And said, what can we do with a really slick pencil that really is built for customers too. So the device is something the customer can pencil. Anybody in the dealership can come up with something and use it easily. So what can we do here? And we recognize from our histories that the internet manager could use a little help in being able to easily give somebody a quote. And that's what we went to market with. But our original intent was to build a full-fledged CRM, and we have gotten.
I thought I
far away
remembered
from,
that. Thankfully, right?
Yeah, probably.
God, I would think it would take years to build out and get to a point where everything's on the positive with CRM. Yeah, I'd stay away, no doubt.
Yeah, we've taken
But
the approach to try and enhance the CRMs that are already there. So we try to
yeah.
be friendly to all of them.
So then the obvious next solution was something around digital retailing. Um, but again, it seems like you guys have steered away from digital retailing as well, and just thinking more of like, I guess you would call it like like a beginning to end or an end to end solution.
Well, we think of end to end as digital retailing. It's these tools that are promising that they can take a customer from a click to a deal, and
Mm-hmm.
walk them all the way through it. And we feel a bit differently. We feel that the dealers need empowerment as well. And what we're seeing, especially saw it at the conference I was at, a lot of vendors were presenting stats that showed the consumer doesn't want to self-serve themselves through a deal. They do
Oh my
want some
goodness,
hand holding
you're
from
going
the
against the
dealership.
grain, man. You're going against the grain.
Well, and I don't want to hog this total answer because I know Tom has put a lot of thought into it as well. But we did do digital retailing. You know, we jumped on that bandwagon when the pandemic hit. You know, everyone was in panic mode. The dealerships were shut down. Uh, there was, you know, we were concerned about our revenues. To be honest with you, total transparency there, and we jumped in there and we had a tool that answered a lot of this. And we grew the company. We like tripled the number of clients we had in like 2 months. It was crazy. We
Mm-hmm.
were just trying to keep up, but it didn't take long to realize we were on the wrong path. So,
Was there something specific that pointed to being on the wrong path?
well, it was really what we knew as dealers. It was just like you go. So, the same time in all of this, the OEMs were pushing for digital
Mm-hmm.
retailing tools, and it was a feature grind. All right. So, does it have this
Mm-hmm.
feature? Can it do this? Can it do that? Will it, fully integrate with this? And blah 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 blah. And it was all stuff that didn't actually have anything to do with making a car deal happen, and it certainly didn't help dealers. So as we're slogging along on, talking to some of the manufacturers and whatnot at that time, we realized, man, if we go down this path, we're going to get locked in here, and we're also going to be doing a disservice to the dealers,
Mm-hmm.
and I think now it's starting to prove that it's a disservice to the consumer as well. And so, anyway, it wasn't right. Dealers still have a place, a really big place, and customers still want to buy from people. They still want to be sold. If you didn't want to be sold, we'd all be driving Hyundai Accents. And
I mean,
that's not a dig on the
it's
Accent. It's a good car.
like I said, I mean, it's going against the grain, but the reality is, I think most people, if you're actually working at the dealership, you know, I, I'm sure there's some exceptions out there. Um, but I know, being on the dealership front and watching the consumer, especially during COVID, when you'd think they would have wanted to do more online. Um, and maybe we'll eventually get to that point, but it definitely wasn't the case here. It was not the case here. We still wanted customers to, I mean, our customers still want to come to the dealership. They still want to talk to somebody. They still want it to be sold something, But again, you read all the articles, you follow certain people and, you read the stats and it seems like you know, that's quite the opposite. What the crap is that noise?
Bluetooth headset, probably, Jeff. Sounds like a little
Oh,
feedback.
yeah. Anyways, so, Tom, where do you fall in with that? What's your feelings? Do you feel the same way, or do you and Alex ever butt heads around that, or are you always on the same page? I mean, I know I wouldn't. I probably wouldn't buy a car through a digital retailing solution. I'd still want to go into the dealership, but I'm also old school. Well, I used to not be. I guess I am now. Um, but I like to be sold. Plus, I'm a sucker. You probably sell me anything if you're good enough. Where do you fall in that, Tom?
I think one of the best things about the partnership with Alex is that we're yin and yang. We actually don't agree on a bunch of stuff, and I actually think it's our strength. To be completely honest
That's
with
sweet.
you, we fight, we disagree, we yell at each other on a pretty regular basis, and I actually think everybody wins because of it. Is the honest truth. I think we come up with something that's unique because of that relationship. I've come to the space now where I embrace it and cherish it. And it's tough sometimes. I think it's tough for Alex too, because we do come from very different perspectives sometimes. I can tell you one perspective where we're in full alignment is this. And we pivoted our whole company, Jeff, back middle of last year
Mhm.
because we looked at the data and everybody that we talked to, and I'm talking about Cox Automotive, everybody is telling us you got 5 to 7% of people that actually want to go all the way through online.
Mhm.
Right? Like, so wait a minute, we're spending all this time and energy to
Yeah.
to build all this feature set, and frankly, it's confusing to the customer also, and they're not using it, and dealers hate it. And it honestly it went against our core belief. My core belief is that salespeople and managers are the best at what we do on the planet. Literally, when you get to that moment where they're ready to actually look at a car and buy a car, there's nobody better. I spent 15 years doing it myself, and they're really good at that. It kind of gets back to my first answer a while back, Jeff. I really felt like we're asking salespeople and BDC and managers to do things that they're not good at, right? And they're mundane. You got to fix those parts. And so we decided to build a product. And yes, it goes against the grain, but we're all in, right? And says,
Mhm.
let's get the customer up at the high funnel shopping channels. Let them see a accurate payment that the guy on the desk can recreate and keep his gross, right? That was a huge piece for us. And I want them to see that everywhere. That way they trust it. But the other big technology that we developed that I haven't seen anybody else do, and this is critical, and it's actually what's fueling our Service IQ and Equity IQ products now, is that we came up with a technology that caches every single option available for the banks that dealer signed up for. And the reason that matters is that every other solution that's out there right now requires a customer to be an expert. Like you got to actually know, I want this term, I want this down
Yeah.
payment, here's the credit score. Like they don't know, dude. They're confused and they just like, what the
No,
hell?
they don't
They
know
have
that.
nowhere to get off the train at that point, right? What our solution does in
Yeah,
the
for
very
sure.
first click is it drops them on for their situation the best term and payment, right? They don't have to be an expert anymore. Like we give them this transparency that I've never seen in any other solution. And what we've seen in the data now is that the trust that is built in the first 30 seconds is insane.
Hmm.
It's absolutely incredible. And so we realize like we don't need to be in that business. Like what we need to do is say, okay, we've built this insane engagement engine. How do we just get more people into that engagement engine and create these really high quality leads for a dealer and then send them to their CRM? Don't make them log into our stuff because they already got too many tabs. Let them just work out of their CRM. Give them really good information in that CRM and let them go do what they do best. And so that's what we pivoted to. We literally said, well, the best place to get that data right now is in the service drive, right? The
Mhm.
next best place is in the sold DMS data. And so that's what we're doing. And we said, I don't have to worry about OEM certifications anymore and all the hoops that they're making these other vendors jump through that waters the solution down. And frankly, is not a great experience for the customer either at this point. They're like, I'm not playing the game. And I honestly, Alex and I talk about this. We look back about how gutsy that was in the heat of this, and we really staked the whole company on it if you really think about it.
Yeah.
And we just finished our best quarter ever with Service IQ, and it's just like the leads are just flowing in for us right now, and it's like we know we're on the right track. I literally right before we jumped on here was talking to the
Mhm.
owner of a very large dealer group near us, Jeff, and he was just trying to rule us out. He's seen a bunch of our stuff. He saw the apes. Like, what are you guys talking about? What is all this stuff? Right? The gorilla. And I got to talking to him, and 45 minutes later, he's like, "Damn you!" He said, "I can't rule you out." I'm like, "What can you say?" It's
Yeah. Yeah.
like you're on to something here, dude, and we are on to something. It's a fun journey for us, but it is that iterative process where Alex and I are arguing, and Jack, our other partner, is arguing about the product and being very honest with each other about where this is going to go and what do dealers really need. And I think that to me is what's so fun about this company. And I hope we never lose it. Matter of fact, the point when we get bigger, when we lose that, I'm out.
He's out. With the service IQ piece, is that sort of like a equity mining piece? Step me through that a little bit more, because if we use IllumiQuote here at the dealership, but we're not using the service piece yet. And I know Alex has been excited about it ever since you guys came up with the idea. But there's plenty of, I mean, there's lots of other different service pieces out there. There's, I mean, how many equity mining pieces are there? And I know with working with a lot of those different services, a lot of it was, how do you set up almost a completely different or a completely separate department for the service piece? Or let's have someone from the sales department comes in 2 hours early to speak with all the service customers. Let's run a value on that vehicle, let's look that customer up, see where they're at, find out what their payoff is, so then we can have this nice presentation to the customer to see if they would like to, when would be a great time to get out of the car. And maybe it's now, and we can lower your payments by $100 or $50 more a month. We can get you into the exact same vehicle with 0 miles, all that good stuff. What makes it different with you guys, or
So
with Service
I'll take
IQ?
the first pass, Alex, and then you can jump in and add color. But to me, it's the sweet spot now of everything we've been talking about leading up to this, Jeff. What's so fun about this product? So we actually took the traditional equity solution and flipped it on its head. So there's about 11 other like true competitors in that space that have any real market share. So we did a
Mhm.
full comparison and kind of looked at them, like what's the feature set and what is their claim to fame basically. And there's only really two that are big players, Automotive Mastermind and Auto Response Logic,
Auto alert.
Auto Alert, excuse me.
Auto
But
alert.
what all of them don't get right, in my opinion, in our opinion, is that they do this calculation via an algorithm and determine, based on your data, here are the people that are eligible. And then is when the crucial mistake is made. They say, okay, Mr. Dealer, decide which ones you want to send mailers to. Decide which one you want to send a static email to with a PDF. Ooh, it's 2022. We're sending PDFs with static offers at this point. Are you kidding me? And if you're lucky, you're going to have your salespeople actually cold call the rest of them. That's the
Mhm.
solution, Jeff. Like, are you freaking kidding me? And so we said and that's where this idea of like, let's fix this for dealers, right? And
Mhm.
so we said, okay, let's flip the message, right? Let's process all the repair orders. The dealer gets to choose what eligibility means. In other words, how old is the car? How much equity do they have? We pre-process all that, and the salespeople never see it. Nobody ever sees it. We just do it all behind the scenes. But the magic happens is that when we determine who's eligible, we now fire off a text, fully TCPA compliant text, or email if you don't want it. If you're lithium, you don't want to do that, no problem, right? Or both. And what happens is, and this is really where it gets fun. So it's no longer a static offer. So we can, that one click the customer makes from the text or from the email says, here's your car, it was just in service, so we know the mileage. Here's the estimated value. Here's your estimated equity. And now here's all the cars in my inventory with your specific information and your new payment. And there's nobody else in the industry that can do it right now. But it is so engaging, and the leads that we're generating for dealers, there's so much volume coming out of this thing right now. It's incredible. And we also took our other technology, which is digital body language, and we incorporated it. So when that lead actually hits the CRM for the salesperson, the customer has already raised their hand, said, yes, I would be interested, some version of that value for my car and some version of that equity. That's what's so different about this. And you see every click the customer made as a salesperson. So when you make that first phone call, it's no longer a cold call. It's literally, you raised your hand already. Here's specifically what you're interested in, what you're looking at now, and it's just a completely different call. And the conversion's off the chart right now for us.
You mentioned a few minutes ago around the consumers that's using and engaging with it. I should say with IllumiQuote, or maybe, of course, that ties into Service IQ, that it quickly builds trust And, if anyone's used a lot of those different tools back in the day, they're not accurate. You get some type of weird range. Um, especially when you start talking about incentives, rebates, who knows what some consumers can qualify for. How do you get to a point where you can get it down to such an accurate payment and be able to take all that information? Because again, I think that's where so many of them fall. I mean, heck, even your penciling or desking tools, they don't they're not overly accurate sometimes. Unless you really know the product, you can go in there, you can play with it, you can edit the settings and all that good stuff. But even then, you've got different incentives. Um, Another thing with that is you do have the incentives, but a lot of times the incentives are only for the manufacturer OEM bank. It's not for, any other banks out there. And I know for myself, I probably, I wouldn't be driving my Tacoma if it wasn't for using Eluma Quote and being able to see, holy shit, Ally Bank has the most ridiculous residual values. And I can get into this brand new truck for, 300 and some odd bucks a month with nothing down, rolling my tax and tags into it. And there's not, I mean, your tool is the only tool that I know of that gets that accurate of data and gets it from several different lending services and allows you to see exactly, even down to your tax and tags, because of taking into account what state you're in. I almost forget my question around that, but but what was the struggle behind that? What did you guys have to do without giving up the secret sauce to get it so accurate? And do you think the consumer is there something about the presentation that allows that customer to trust it that much more?
Tom, if you don't mind, I'd like to take the technical side of what's being done, and if you don't mind taking the customer interaction side of that question, let's see if we can tackle it together. So, when Tom was talking about the people at FRIKIntech, that's where it really starts. The engineering team came from Dealer.com. They helped build the Dealer.com CRM. They built now 2 pencil tools in a row, and you could say that we've got a unique team, and we've been told this by our data partners, MarketScan. And we're very proud of that. We're very proud of our partners at FRIKInTech, especially MarketScan. They go back a long way building leasing tools that if anyone who's been in the business for more than a decade probably had one of those touchscreen panels in their store that you'd use for calculating leases. And they've seen every situation. So we partnered with them, and that was first and foremost. The second part, and there's no secret sauce here, because getting it right is hard. It's very hard. And the second part of this goes back to Jack, Casey, and Michael. And those 3 in particular, they're our engineers, and Jack's one of the founders of FRIKInTech as well. And their understanding of how to read the technical documentation that MarketScan put out there and how to consume the numbers, knowing that in a certain tax situation, you can't use equity this way in this state because they had to tackle this themselves. They had to build it themselves. But in this state, you can't do it this way. Or this is a situation where the zip code doesn't matter. There's a different tax down to a whole other level. Or it gets even crazier. Like if you're a Georgia dealer and you're selling Hondas into Florida, there's different ways to do the rebates and the lending that are very different. So it's a combination of partnering with the right technology and understanding what you're getting into. I think those 2 things are stuff you've got to earn over time from experience to get right.
Yeah. Yeah, I would get that, especially on the engineering side. And like you said, being able to read, I guess, the all the different nuances that go into being able to to get, accurate enough on that type of payment.
Yeah, you can't outsource that.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I mean, Jeff, literally at my Honda store and motor cars in Cleveland, I mean, I rode the dust, legitimately rode the dust for 4 years. I mean, we did 200 lease deals a month on Hondas. So
Wow.
the thing for me is that the deal structure matters here. And I think that's where most of the DR solutions miss. Like there's a technical spec to it, but there's a way that a guy on a desk is going to structure a deal. And if you don't actually understand that, and you don't have the hierarchy, how the deal flows, in other words, how you do the calculation, it's going to be wrong. Or you may come up with a similar payment, but you actually cut them out of some gross in the back end, right? So there's all these pieces that come together that there's a lot of vendors out there that say, oh, well, this guy came from a dealer background. It's like, how many years did you actually spend writing the desk?
On the desk, yeah.
Seriously, I mean, really.
Yeah, there's an art to structuring a deal. And, I mean, anyone can go in there and just structure a deal, but there's levels to that shit.
Yep.
Especially when, you want to take into account how do you maximize your gross, your inventory. I mean, there's levels to it for sure.
Well, and what most people don't get until you're on the vendor side or building software is it's one thing to understand how to structure a deal as a human, right? And you look at the stock number, you start to steal, here's this bank, here's the, but when it's software and you have to match up a VIN and the VIN doesn't decode correctly, and then on top of that, then you don't get your incentives stacked correctly. And so one of the things we learned early on with our relationship with MarketScan is when you cut a corner to try and save money and you bring in a inferior data source for incentives or for taxes or for whatever, and you don't have keys that match up correctly, you're going to have issues with your payments, right? And so we said all in on MarketScan day one. It's going to be more expensive, but that's actually how we get to these really accurate payments because all the data matches up. All the keys align correctly, right? And that, I'm giving the secret sauce, but that's what it is that we get the data from the same source and it's all matched up. So the algorithm that we built to build that structure actually works every time.
Yeah, I know. It's always been impressive. And in the earlier months or years, speaking with Alex, of course, and just imagining the headaches around being able to structure all that, it'd probably keep me up at night for sure.
It's kept Jack up for sure.
Yeah. And I think you asked the question about the user side of it, and it really is what I talked about, the pre-caching of the payments. That view I've not seen from any other solution at this point. It'll be hard for them to pull that off without spending what we spend on the data, but more importantly, really understanding how to load that. The customer, so I use, this is one of my secrets, is I actually sit behind my wife and my mom, and I let them use whatever application I'm working on at the time. And it tells me so much about how a real customer that's the first time they're seeing is going to actually interact with that app. I've watched them with other products, and it's like they slide this and they do this. I really don't want to. I don't want to type this. I don't want to give them this information. And I just watch how disjointed it is, and I'm like, this is so sad. And I remember the very first time I landed my wife on our app on a phone, and she was looking at a BMW, right? Sorry, Jeff, but she was looking at a BMW, and she's like, well, these are the payments, but what do I do? I'm like, those are the payments. So where's my lease? Is that my lease? And it was just fascinating watching her go through that first screen that we dumped her on. I'm like, so it's all here? And I'm like, yeah, it's all there. The other thing I think is really interesting about the other products is, and it just blows my mind having trained salespeople for years. Sales 101 is when you actually get to the point where you've done your product presentation, you've done your demo drive and all these other pieces, and you're presenting numbers. You present the numbers and then you shut up and let them react. Let them find out where they're actually at in the process. But there are no DR solutions that actually let them react. And it always just blown my mind. Once you're on the trip, you're on. You can't get off. And so I think that our reaction capability, is really unique in the industry right now. and it's
Oh, it
missed.
is. Yeah, it
I
is.
mean,
Yeah,
the other side there is that we end where dealers begin. So it's not just, what you're hitting on, Tom, is that the consumer is being presented with this complex experience, and they come to us and kind of have to like unlearn the all the complexities that you've picked up from going to other places and dealing with other tools. But at the same time, to Tom's point, like it's built around the car dealer and how the car dealer wishes to transact. So,
Mhm.
it's got a spot where it ends and lets the dealers pick it back up right where dealers should.
Well, that ties into something else that, we've struggled with here, and I know plenty of other dealerships do as well, but it's that disconnect between what you've got set up digitally and what you've got on the showroom floor. And I wish there was but that comes down to people and process. Um, and also having a piece of software that allows you to use it digitally and be able to somehow seamlessly get that in front of the customer and the salespeople, when the customer does come into the dealership. What do you, I'm not sure how to frame a question around that, but maybe I'm sure you see that as well. And what do you guys do whenever it comes down to signing up a dealership and saying, hey, it's going to work great here, but if you can get this in front of the consumer when they also come in, because that's always where the breakdown is. Even with digital retailing, because the consumer will be on the website, they'll go through all the different steps. They of course won't finish it completely, and then they come into the dealership, and it's almost like they're starting over. How do you
Well,
train the dealerships, or what do you guys? How have you set it? Have you adjusted the software? Anything that you've done to sort of help make that a more seamless environment.
I just want to say there's two scenarios here that we've seen play out. So one is on the accuracy front. So, we strive very hard to make sure that the payment the customer is shown and is working with is transactionable. So the dealer doesn't have to do the dance when they come in and say, man, that thing's not that you can't qualify for that lease rebate on a loan. I'm sorry. That's, I don't
Mhm.
know why we showed that to you on our website or whatever. That's wrong.
That happens
But
a lot.
yeah. But or man, now I got to find $3,000 to come off of this car to try and match that customer's expectations of what our website showed them. That
Hmm.
that friction is what we're all about getting rid of. So one is presenting something that is trustworthy for the dealers to have on their website, have going to their service drive, have going to their internet leads, so that when the customer does come in, it matches what they're going to pencil later. So if they don't want to use something like Sales IQ in the showroom on an iPad, sliding that across the desk and want to stick to a piece of paper or whatever works from their CRM system, that's fine. But we do have people like Matthew Haken, who we've
Hmm.
had on Refresh Friday before, and
Yep.
uh, and he starts the customer online with Sales IQ, and he starts them from his sales agent's perspective with Sales IQ, however that might be, through a text, through an email, in the store,
Hmm.
doesn't matter. And that's where they keep all the customer presentations there.
Okay.
And
Okay.
Tom, I don't know if you got a little more color you want to throw on that.
Yeah, Jeff. I mean, you're hitting on one of the questions that was asked. One of the people in the chat said, "Hey, do you guys get into iPads?" The truth is, we can. Um, we've had dealers use that very successfully. They can pick the deal right up where the customer left off if they want to. What I've found, working with a lot of dealers all over the country, is they have those ingrained showroom processes. And so we thought the only way to really combat this at a high level, Jeff, was making sure, as Alex has said, that payment is right and it's structured in a way that the desk will recreate it. One of the things, Ed Brooks is actually on this call, who's our lead on onboarding, And one of the last things we do before we go live is we proof payments. In other words, a dealer has to sign off that payment's spot on, and how we will build it before we'll actually launch a store on the product. And it's actually can be quite tedious sometimes to make sure it's right. But I think it's one of the biggest reasons why we've had the success that we've had. Is
Okay.
they don't actually have to change their floor processes. That customer walks in with the printout, or like, here's what I saw, and like, you can do that.
So I know you guys basically track everything, from the click to the engagement. Is there anything over maybe the last year, or even since you've started this, are there any type of stats that have just sort of either confirmed what you thought you knew but weren't sure about, or maybe just a complete opposite where you thought, oh, this is probably how it goes down, but once you're seeing the stats and how the consumer is flowing through the product, it sort of blew your mind. You're like, wow, I never considered that. Does anything stick out?
I would say there was one surprising one, probably for both of us. And then I'd like to, Tommy, he's throwing us a softball on Service IQ right now. But the one that came out pretty early, that as somebody who used to work at a website company before, was we were seeing a huge bounce rate. Like something would get sent out via an email as a response to an internet lead, and customer would open it, and then they would leave very quickly. Not very quick, like not like seconds, but like without doing anything, and maybe within a minute or so. And then because we track them through their browser, so it's a cookieless tracking system. It's a lot of detail on that. Stay away from that for now. But it's really hard to shake us once we get in there. But we saw them coming back, and so when we launched or Service IQ, we watch this again. So we send out a lot of our messaging around noon, and we watch the same activity. Somebody opens it, they don't do anything. And then around 6 or 7 p.m., we start to watch this activity climb. And so what we have hypothesized, and we're pretty sure this is true, is that somebody's opening this thing up and having a reaction like, oh, wow, this is different. Let me come back here when I'm not at work or when I'm with my wife or husband, and let's really explore what this thing's showing us.
Well, that's something that I've witnessed ever since plugging in. It's not just about the evening. Someone in the morning coming in the evening. I've dug into the stats and I've seen where it's almost like a week later. And not only was it a week later, but there had really, it's not like there was an email sent out or some type of follow up that gave them a reminder with the link back to it. No, this is just organically that customer. I don't know if they bookmarked it. I don't know. Maybe they've got, if it's a text and the link's there and they're going back through their text messages to get access. But that was something, wasn't too long ago. I was in there and I saw it was almost 2 weeks, which God forbid we've got a card that's been sitting here longer than 2 weeks, but obviously that happens. And seeing that same customer came back, from day 1, day 3, day 5, day 10, and you're starting to think, all right, what are they doing? They keep coming back to this exact same car, playing with, the different edits, their trade in, how much they want to put down, the payments and such. It's like, wow, it's almost like, if you've ever gone fishing, you feel like, the fish keeps nibbling at your hook. You just waiting for it. Just grab it and go. It's like, just take it. But that's something that I took notice to. That really surprised me was seeing a significant amount of consumers actually coming back days later, sometimes longer, to re-engage with I guess with that particular vehicle and with Illumiquote.
Some fun data signals, and you'll see this too, Jeff, if you're playing around in there, that I find fascinating. And we're only getting a bigger signal with Service IQ now. So we see, I'm always amazed because we track device IDs. I'm always amazed at, as you said, there's all these nibbles, and they're typically on mobile devices, and then all of a sudden they'll convert to a desktop. as you can tell by the OS that it's no longer mobile, right? It's
Yeah.
actually desktop. And what we see is when that conversion happens, they're probably 2 days away from making a deal. It's really, really
Oh, really?
fascinating. Yeah, because if you look at what the activity that happens when they convert to desktop, they oftentimes were just touching payments, but then they really start to get serious about downstrokes,
Mhm.
trade, valuation and stuff like that. They're much lower funnel. Let's just put it that way to be really safe. And that signal is really strong. It's really fascinating. To the point where we're actually now building alerts off of that because like you better pay attention when this happens because this person's about to buy a car. So that's a really interesting little piece of data and analytics that we've got. But
Mhm.
the one that is fascinating is the service, and it's because a vast majority of these people they weren't actually shopping, they weren't really thinking about it. You kind of caught them off guard, and so we do see these short bursts, and then hours or maybe a day later they come back
Mhm.
in, sometimes different device, sometimes same device, and spend a bunch more time there. And the amount of time they spend playing is significantly more than what we even see from a traditional sales IQ. The other thing it's really
Yeah.
because that's an interactive experience. So we're putting in estimated trade values and estimated payoffs. One of the first things we see them go to is immediately changing the payoff amounts, which I also thought
Okay.
was really fascinating. Um, so there's a lot of things. The other thing I left out about Service IQ that is very unique is that we wanted to go after conquest customers. Once we realized from the data that half to as much as 60% of those people didn't buy from the dealerships, so you don't actually have the sold data on it. But we wanted to touch
Mhm.
them also. And so we did it. We did that estimated payoff amount allows us to go ahead and make the offer. And those
Okay.
customers are really going in there making the adjustments right away, to kind of tuning what the actual amounts are. But it's such a treasure trove for the salespeople when they make that call to actually know exactly where that deal's at. You wouldn't have it from your own CRM at that point.
No, no.
The other big one that has surprised me, and Alex actually made this comment out right after we launched the email portion of the communication. And Alex proclaimed when we saw the first data, email is not dead after all. And what we realized is when you have the right content in email and it comes at the right timing, dude, our delivery rates, open rates, and click through are quadruple, triple national averages on Service IQ right
Mhm.
now, and it has actually reinvigorated me even for what email can still do today, even with the craziness that is email, all the spam and everything that's going on. The reality is when the message is right, and it's delivered at the right time, it still
Yeah.
absolutely is.
Yeah, I believe that. I definitely believe that. I mean, you would think by now email would have evolved. We wouldn't be talking about that. It really wouldn't be uh, a popular communication piece, but it hasn't gone anywhere. And it's still just as effective as it was 10, 15 years ago, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. Were there, Alex, were there any questions that popped up that you guys wanted to tackle before we take the jump?
Well, what are we doing next, Tom? That would probably be a. I,
What are you guys doing next?
I can tell you we got two big projects. So one, we just finished our CDK certification. So yay, that was
Yeah.
that's a big one. Um, and with that, we transitioned over to doing sold attribution on our Service IQ product, which will then cascade into an Equity IQ product that we're launching this year. So, a couple of things, put our money where our mouths are, and we believe that we can show a dealer exactly how many deals we helped influence. And it's not
Okay.
just a matter of the deals that were done on vehicles that were traded on newer used cars, but also the vehicles that were just sold outright to the dealership. Because when you go into that service drive and also give them an offer to just sell their car outright, people take you up on it. And one of the things that Tom was talking about was how customers go straight to the equity part of our app. And another surprising thing was the number of people, since we launched Service IQ especially, that are putting in um, $0 in their payoff. So a lot of service customers have paid off vehicles, and they, in some cases, are able to sell them. So it's become a great little spot to acquire inventory. I think Jeff really froze there.
Yeah, I think he tapped out.
Yeah, so we're obviously having a lot of fun, not just in the naming of our company, but and also the
And now I'm
surprise
back.
and delight.
Seems like
that
you're
we get
both
to
out.
bring all
Maybe it's my
around.
connection. Everyone's froze up.
Yeah, it might be you, Jeff.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead and end it here. And gentlemen, if you can hear me, thanks for joining. And we'll catch up with you here in a few minutes. If anyone wants some more information, of course, jump over to Dealer Refresh. You can hit up Alex. Tom's over there as well. And you can direct message either one of them. And we'll get a copy of this over in the forums. Make it a great weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.